What's your typical writing day?
Usually I tend to get up anywhere between, maybe 5:45, 6:30. Again, I try not to wake my wife. And I get that cup of coffee to get my fix, my caffeine fix, and then I'm usually writing we have a small guest house. I'm usually in the back there. For me, I enjoy reading the newspaper in the morning for about 30 minutes just to get my brain sort of drinking coffee, getting my brain going. I'm an avid reader, I always have been. And I feel like reading really starts, stimulating the mind along with the caffeine. But it gets me going. So, yeah, I try to be working by about 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And again, till, I'll work till the late morning, take a break just to get my head right, and then come back and, probably the early afternoon, and, I can go till late afternoon sometimes. So that's usually my routine. As you said, asked before, is that there's a rhythm to the rhythm. I feel, especially when I'm writing and creating.
And when you say you're reading the paper, is this an actual newspaper?
Yes, I know. I have friends, and my wife still joke me. I do have some traditions that I have not parted ways with, and yes, it is a actual paper newspaper. I really try to avoid the screen as much as I can, because I'm on it all day. So yeah, when I can usually get anything in print, it makes, just to start my day, to get those juices flowing, get my brain working. I find that reading really helps the writing, for sure. And again, doing it not on a screen.
And are you reading the first pages of the?
Yeah, it's usually I'm a longtime Wall Street Journal fan, and I happen to read pretty much everything throughout. I'm a fan of their reportage. I think it's pretty much down the middle. I know, not to get into we're a very divided country right now, but I happen to really appreciate the fact that they're fairly down the middle and not too biased one way or the other. And for me, that's important. So yeah, I mean, knowing what's going on in the world and in our country, again, has really helps me, and I think helps my writing, because you never know where that next idea is coming from. I think a lot of my ideas over the years have come from magazines or articles in the paper, not necessarily Wall Street Journal. I used to read news magazines. I wrote a script about a militia group that was derived from I believe it was a Newsweek article. In my chiropractor at the time, her office, she had this Newsweek article on the rise of militias. Probably this was around 2010 or so. So I wrote another script about a pirate hunter in the Southeast Asia, which was based on a Smithsonian article. So I always find, and I had another idea for a script that was based on a story recently in the Wall Street Journal. So that's where I derive a lot of my ideas from when I'm writing for my film ideas anyway. And then of course, Take Back was hearing something in a sermon, but it was it's a news related type story. So I always found that finding stories in the news, again, I've known people that have just been able to conjure up great stories in their mind. And I've done that a couple times, but I feel like for me, just reading about someone, and again, this is not, stealing the article or anything. It's just coming up like, oh, that's an interesting topic, and then, sort of making it my own. It wasn't never necessarily articles about a particular person. It was about a particular subject, and that definitely helped me, develop my own stories and give me that germ of the idea to then take it in the direction I wanted to and make it my own.
Who do you model your screenwriting after?
I don't model it after anyone per se. I definitely have some people of influence who I think are phenomenal writers, and obviously their track record speaks for themselves. But I've always been, obviously William Goldman, who, he's the godfather of screenwriting. Tony Gilroy, Brian Helgeland, David Koepp, those guys, when you read one of their scripts, I mean, they're just on a whole other level. And, I was always especially, I would say Tony Gilroy especially, because I feel like he writes some just brilliant action. And those screenwriters, I think, for me, were, definitely left an impression, and, how to write just an entertaining script. Because I think sometimes, the way I try to write is that I want people to keep turning the pages. I know this might be, the process for many writers or what they set out to do, but I really do think it's important. It is, after all, you want your audience to keep going. And I've always believed in just being as sparse and concise as possible in my descriptions, and letting the dialogue move the story along, and not getting so wrapped up in smart ass dialogue, but just letting the characters again take the story in a direction and drive the story, especially if you're writing action or adventure or thriller type genre films.
Do you ever subscribe to the idea, I know some people have said, don't delve too much into one artist's work, because then you might end up emulating them too much, and you wouldn't even realize it, or no?
There is definitely some truth to that. Reading a whole array of scripts and writers definitely helps inform you better. I feel like for some of the scripts that I wrote, I always, again, if somebody's to write an action script and they want somebody to just sort of to be a guide to somebody, a reference for them, I would always say look at a Gilroy, a Helgeland, or a David Koepp script, because again, I feel like they're, I should say that for me, pacing's really important. I want to keep the story moving along at a fluid pace, and I feel like those guys, like another Steve Zalian. Steve Zalian, I remember, said something that has left a lasting impression. I read this years ago, where he said, I will cut and cut and cut until if I cut one, again, I'm paraphrasing here, I cut one word, the whole scene falls apart. So just being able to really make your scenes as lean as possible, and in your writing, and to keep it paced, and to keep it moving forward, and keep the story moving forward, the character moving forward. And I do think, yes, it's good. I mean, read all of Tony Gilroy's scripts, but obviously I would suggest reading a whole lot of other scripts and getting a sense of that. Again, just try to stay true to your voice, because it is easy if you read one particular author or one particular screenwriter, you definitely could fall in the trap of, subconsciously you're writing like them. And I think, again, they're good reference points, but you just have to, again, find your own voice and find your own rhythm and pattern, stay true to that.
Do you remember the first script that you read?
It was probably in the late 90s. And I want to say it may have been Chinatown. It's been a while. So, yeah, it may have been Chinatown, or even Saving Private Ryan, which was an amazing script. And Chinatown was obviously Robert Towne, just one of the masters as well. But I think it may have very well been Chinatown.
Where did you get it in 1998?
It would have been through NYU. They had a library that you could go and take scripts out and read, and so that's probably where I got it. And having been a fan of that film growing up and being a kid, when I was a kid, my mom and dad, again, were very liberated. They let us get away with watching, you know what, now I think parents, you know, maybe over protect, but again, the 80s were, you know, the 80s were a different time. But, you know, my mom and dad, you know, exposed us to, you know, many of the great movies. Like I first watched French Connection, which is my favorite film of all time, bar none. When I was, I think, 9, it was running on the local Fox affiliate in New York, and you know, my dad had loved that movie, and he said, "This is a great film," and we watched it, commercials and all. And it's funny because I think that summer, it may have been the summer of '87 or '86, it was on like probably every other week. It was, I mean, this is the '80s, and they, you know, it was a summer film. They just kept running over time, over the course of the summer, or that period of time. But it was. Yeah, I really loved it, and not long after that, you know, we saw The Godfather, and so I think I had probably seen Chinatown and The Godfather, both Godfather films, in Chinatown or in French Connection before I was 10. So I was exposed to film, you know, from a really young age, and yeah, that was so. Yeah. So that was, and your question about Chinatown was, yeah, I probably got that script at the NYU library.